Today I'm going to talk to you about quantum theory.
This is a world premiere. This is a world.
So, welcome to Food for Thought. Today, I'm going to talk to you all about quantum theory. So first of all, I'm going to present this little disclaimer. I am not a quantum scientist. I don't know that much about quantum theory, but there are some things that I can explain to you just because I've spent some time thinking about them and reading about them and listening to people talk about them. I've even used my understanding of quantum theory to talk to acting students about acting techniques. So today, I'm basically going to outline for you something known as the double slit test. And it's used to show the difference between the way particles behave and the way waves behave. Like, let's say I take a particle, like a ping pong ball, and I cover that particle in something like paint that will leave a mark on any surface that it strikes. I aim that particle, or ping pong ball, at a surface that has a slit in it. Behind that, I have a white wall. Not white because of white supremacy, but just because the pigment will show up more clearly on the white wall. Some of the ping pong balls will go through the slit and some of the ping pong balls won't. The ping pong balls that go through the slit will create a very predictable pattern on the wall behind the slit. Simple, right? Now imagine that I have one surface with two slits in it and behind that, a white wall. Again, just because the pigment will show up more clearly on a white wall. Now I fire the particles, or the ping pong balls, through the surface with the two slits in it, and some of the particles will go through one slit, some will go through another, some won't go through the slit at all, and as expected, they create a pattern of two lines along the back wall. Simple so far, right? Now, waves behave in a very different way. If I fire a wave through the surface with the single slit, the wave will travel towards the slit, pass through it, and create the same predictable pattern along the back wall. However, things get a little confusing when I fire the wave through two slits. Instead of the waves creating a double pattern along the back wall, the waves will create something called interference line, and that's because the waves as they travel out will hit each other in certain points, and those places they will cancel themselves out. I know, it sounds really confusing, but just stick with me. And now, when we talk about matter on the subatomic level and try to conduct the same experiment, things go haywire. Now, as predicted, when we fire those subatomic particles through the single slit, some pass through, some don't, creating the very predictable pattern of a single line along the back wall. Still with me? Remember, we're talking about matter here on a subatomic level. When we fire those subatomic particles through the double slits, we would expect that they would create the same predictable pattern of two lines along the back wall. However, they don't. On the subatomic level, those particles create interference lines. They act like a wave. Now you're thinking, how is it possible that they are both a particle and a wave at the same time? And that is what quantum theory is all about. Things get even more strange. So the scientists make these assumptions. They're saying that maybe it's that the particles, they're really tiny and they're passing through and maybe they're bouncing against each other and that's what's creating the interference lines. Instead of firing a bunch of particles at the surface with the double slits at the same time, they decided that they would fire them at the surface with the double slits singly, one at a time. There is no way that these particles were bumping against each other to create that wave pattern. Even firing the particles through one at a time, they still managed to create a wave pattern. How is that even possible? They decided to set up a camera that could take a picture of these subatomic particles as they were being fired towards the surface with the double slits to see how they behaved, how it was possible that they could be behaving like a wave even though they were particles. And this is where things get really mysterious. When they were being observed, the particles went back to acting like particles, and they created what would have been predictable as the double lines along the back wall. Now, how is that even possible? If quantum physics didn't make any sense, why would probably the most intelligent person in the history of the world, Albert Einstein, have been a quantum physicist? You guys do know who Albert Einstein is, right? So there's my very rudimentary explanation of quantum physics, at least as it relates to the double slit test. You can read about the double slit test, and I'm sure that it is something that continues to be done by scientists all over the world, because you know how scientists are. They only believe things once they see them. So now you may ask yourself, why am I talking about quantum physics and this double slit test? If you know me, or you guessed because of the title of this video, I am talking about quantum physics today to make a point about racism. So as you listen to me raving on and on about quantum physics, you were probably thinking to yourself, this is not something that I really understand, but you likely took my word for it, or assumed that there was some place that you could go and verify what I was talking about. I am pretty sure none of you thought this person is a lunatic. I'm sure most people listening to me talk about quantum physics weren't suspicious of me having any ulterior motive, or that I was talking about quantum physics as a way to trick people or to make people feel like they were stupid. I'm able to talk about quantum physics in this way because pretty much no one listening to this conversation, unless you're a scientist who is kind of against quantum theory, has any emotional attachment to the subject. That's not true about racism. When I talk about things like racism and oppression and white supremacy and patriarchy, there are people who are listening to me talk about that who may feel like there's an accusation involved, or that there's some kind of judgment. When people talk about veganism, I think the same thing happens. People who consume animal products might take personally what they're hearing from the person who is the advocate for animal rights. So if you're a man hearing about patriarchy, or if you're somebody who consumes animal products and you're hearing about animal liberation, or you're someone who happens to have been born with white skin and you're hearing about white supremacy and racism, you may feel like it's in your best interest to deny that these things really exist. But just like with quantum theory, just because you don't understand them doesn't mean that they aren't real. Let me know what you think. That's it for this video. Like it if you like it. Share, comment, subscribe. This is Reg signing off. Love yourself. Peace.
And I love myself.